Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Seattle Angel Conference Workshop Series. Today we have Mike Grabham, who is doing some work around making our community stronger through Startup Grind in Seattle. But he also has been doing some work on a program that was going to happen to talk a little bit about Web3 and a little bit about how that is evolving. And so I thought it would be worth our while to have a conversation about that. So I'm John Seacrest. I try to make the startup ecosystems go faster in Seattle, and I'm now trying to get that to happen in other places. We have just finished the health-oriented one, which I think we learned a lot from. We are working on doing a transatlantic one for next week. I will post the link to the info session for those people that think they might want to think about transatlantic angel investing. And that applies for startups too. And in the process of doing all of this work, we're trying to connect a bunch of different people around. So thank you for people putting their LinkedIn into the chat. That helps people have conversations afterwards to make this go. Mike has been running a ongoing program called Startup Grind for several years, perhaps gone a little bit quiet in COVID times, but it was one of the groups where a wide range of personalities and a wide range of skill sets was in the room, as opposed to going to some of the meetings and 9 out of 10 people were technical people, or 9 out of 10 people were social media people, but not the full startup team. So if you were trying to do founder dating, you would have trouble finding the counterpart that had skills different than yours. So Startup Grind always was a place that allowed us to do that. And Mike has started spending some attention on Web3, and I thought we would engage in that. But before we get into that, I've asked some questions to my investors at Seattle Angel Conference in the past. And I would be remiss if I didn't say we're in the middle of Seattle Angel Conference 21, and the final event for that is May 18th. So anybody want to see what the outcome is, that's when we'll do that. Nonetheless, how many people here have purchased some kind of crypto token, cryptocurrency thing? Two, like I don't have one. So Brian and Dinah are the only ones that have one, as far as I can tell. How many people have bought? So that means you haven't bought NFTs. You haven't done anything with smart contracts. You're not members of a DAO.
Yeah, is anyone a member of a DAO or bought an NFT?
No.
Nope.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
Sounds like for the most part we're at ground zero, except for maybe Ninus, who has more active engagement than the rest of us. But since we have a sort of a small community here, I think maybe the best format for us is to, sort of set the framework and then just have a conversation about what the possible issues are. We use this notion of token, we use this notion of NFT, we use this notion of a DAO. Let's sort of spend some time getting precise about what those are a little bit, and then talk about, in the context of investing in startups, or in the context of startups creating a new model for something and utilizing one of those mechanisms to drive that model, what could Web3 do that would change what we do now? That's sort of the question I want to dive into. So Mike, why don't you start with who you are and what you're doing, and then dive right into sort of framing the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, John. John and I have known each other for many, many years. I started Startup Grind actually 10 years ago this summer, so in Seattle. So been in the startup community for many, many years. So I dove into this Web3 thing that people are starting to learn more about last summer, about July, August last summer. I started getting really interested in it and started playing around with it. And I've owned crypto for several years, 3-4 years. So not new to the blockchain world, but definitely it was new to the metaverse and Web3 and what's going on there. So So yeah, so I've learned a lot over the last 6-8 months, a ton actually. It's a extremely fast moving industry. It's changing almost every few weeks. It changes. Definitely every 3 months it changes. So you know, I'll spend just 30 seconds about my background. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've started 6 companies, real companies that had products and services and money and crap and all the things that goes along with that. I've raised money, I've lost money, I've done all that stuff. All my money raised has been through angel investors, so extremely familiar with the process of that when you have a startup. So I'm super sympathetic with anyone trying to start a company. It's very hard. It's not easy, even for the best people. It's not easy. So I have a soft spot in my heart for that, and that's what I do, is help people do that for their own selves. So let's just start with kind of the basics. So you know, blockchain has been around for actually almost 10 years now, so it's not new by any stretch of the imagination. But it's new because it's more mainstream. You know, it's in the news. You know, you see that happening on a constant basis. So one of the things that we're learning with blockchain is what it can do with the smart contracts and things like that. So that's you know, what happened with blockchain, and it's now started, you know, to crypto. Now it's, you know, we heard about ICOs, and now we're talking about NFTs and DAOs and the metaverse. So let's, you know, talk about just some terms, some basic terms, so we're at least semantically know what we're talking about. So when we talk about metaverse, it's not just one thing. It's not just one metaverse. There's actually several metaverses. You know, Decentraland's a metaverse, Sandlot's a metaverse. So there's different metaverses that exist, and those will continue to grow. Facebook has their own metaverse. Or Meta, excuse me, Meta has their own metaverse. So there is, you know, it's not just a one thing. It's actually small buckets or large buckets, depending on how you want to look at it. So that's the metaverse. And I can go into more detail on what's actually happens in the metaverse, but that's the metaverse. And then you've got NFTs and DAOs. So NFTs are basically technically non-fungible tokens, right? Which means they are unique to themselves and can't be duplicated. So, you know, very common thing that started basically 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, was, you know, some kind of artwork being an NFT because it was unique and it's a unique NFT. So that is what started us. And now we have lots of things that NFTs can be outside of artwork. You know, they're attaching NFTs to wine, you know, before it's made, to sports memorabilia. So all those things are now able to attach NFTs because they have a great use of showing provenance, which is where it came from and the path it's gotten to where it is today for you if you had that. So the NFT world is, again, super in this mainstream media. I mean, it's everywhere in the media. It's you know, super hypey, you know, lots of, you know, celebrities trying to play in the NFT space, et cetera. So, but the NFT, if you just break it down in its simplest form, is really just an ability to attach a uniqueness to something, whether that be digital or whether that be a physical item. I mean, they're literally selling houses, you know, property as NFTs because you can attach so many things through a smart contract. So that's I think the semantics of NFT, a DAO. Excuse me, I didn't talk about the DAO. The DAO is a new organization type, like, you know, if you're, you know, a corporate guy, you have the C Corp, an S Corp, an LLC, right? You're going to start hearing that DAOs actually fit into that family as well. A DAO is a community-run organization, and not to make a plug, but Startup Grind actually just announced 2 days ago that they have a DAO. You know, it's the SG DAO, which is a community-run accelerator. So DAOs, you know, especially for it was Chris Dan, you know, talking about how can I put this group together. A DAO would make complete sense for what at least the things I heard you say, and what can I do with this community. So a DAO is, you know, it's run by the community. It's governed by the community. You know, there's no one central figure that kind of controls it. Although what we've seen over the last year, 9 months, that usually there's 3 or 4 bodies, maybe they're individuals, maybe they're entities that have a lot of influence on a DAO, because a lot of DAOs are, as the amount of money you input into the DAO, you have voting rights pro rata of that money that you're putting in. So a DAO is a very, very interesting corporate structure. It's only legal currently in 2 states, and that's Montana and Tennessee. Oddly enough, just 2 states. It's
Wyoming, it's legal.
Well, did I say Wyoming? Sorry, did I say, okay, yeah.
Montana. No.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. So it's Wyoming and Tennessee, the only 2 places that actually recognize a DAO as a legal entity. There are things you can do around, like Colorado has an interesting kind of corporate structure that you can throw a DAO into, but for the most part, right now you've got 2 states, and that's going to change. That's definitely going to change over time.
If everybody's okay with it, I would like to sort of double down on the DAO question at some level, but we sort of hand waved ourselves through a whole bunch of words here, right? And I'm trying to write the words down into the documents
notes
that I just put in. And so everyone else can feel free to come in if they want to do that. But, so I have this distributed autonomous organization, and that is managed by the fact that I have some mechanism to define me, right? So there's a token that represents me as being a member, right?
Yeah.
So walk through what makes a DAO different than a Google group, right? Why is it that there's something unique about the DAO that's different than a bunch of people on a mailing list sending email to each other?
Yeah, gotcha. So as John started to kind of go down that rabbit hole, is a DAO. Let's just say the people on this call create a DAO, and we said, okay, we're going to do, you're going to choose how much money you want to throw into the DAO. And it can be, John puts $10, I put 100.
Well, you don't have to put money in it to have a DAO, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. So, you put 10, I put 100, Brian puts, $10. Christian doesn't put any in. We all have membership to the DAO. Now, based on, and again, this is a very generalized thing because the DAO is very flexible, but based on just what's kind of happened in the past 8 to 9 months, year, is based on the amount of money you put in, you would get tokens and pro rata of that amount of money, right? So again, if John put in $10 and I put in 100, I would have more tokens than John.
So I think I want to step back half a step. A DAO is just a group, right? And the rules that we use for managing membership in the group and then managing resources in the group are essentially completely arbitrary. What DAOs have been used for in the last 8 to 9 months is to get groups of people to buy expensive NFTs.
Yeah.
Or Constitution,
other stuff, Constitution,
or other things. But it's basically a way to get a bunch of people to put money together and then to agree then how we're going to spend those resources in some way. But
correct.
You could use it for the YMCA or your local church or whatever, right? Manage the process. But and then I would go back to I set up an entity because I can't open a bank account without an entity. And then I have a Google group and I vote by email and we follow all of this social engineering. What is it that the DAO has that the EIN and the bank and the nonprofit, whatever entity that I created doesn't have?
Like I would say the main thing is this governance issue, right? It's the ability to govern,
But that decision is a structure of its operating agreement about what we're
correct.
choosing to do. I form an entity and I write an operating agreement. I can follow the same rules in
I-
the
you
regular
could,
legal thing, but there's some sharp edges here that are fundamentally different, right?
yeah.
In the DAO, I'm not using a bank. I'm using tokens. There's no
Yeah.
EIN, there's no bank, nothing, right? Now it turns out that it looks like an LLC in Wyoming. Does it also look like an LLC in Tennessee?
Tennessee, yeah. I
And do
mean,
I
it's,
still have to register, right?
yeah. That's
But
that means
I don't have to have a bank account.
no. And that's the difference. Obviously, when you open up a corporation in today's world, you have to have a bank account, right? That's one of the requirements, right? And you have to get an EIN number, which is one of the requirements. So in the DAO world, that's not the case yet. Now that's going to change, no question. That's going to change, but when and how, we don't know that yet. It will change. I mean, literally, when I say 8 days ago, Tennessee just approved this, just 8 days ago. So that's how quickly this is happening. So it's not like it's been around for years. It's just starting.
I see Dennis's hand up.
Hey, John, I'm not sure it's open for question or not, but I do have some question I want to ask, just to extend to what you folks were talking about. So basically, my understanding, very preliminary, is that there's basically blockchain enable this kind of a DAO, right? There's a certain way you can keep track of things. It cannot be modified or changed once you have committed that. So then you build up another policy or agreement on top of that. But because that foundation, you can replace the traditional bank or whatever system you use to actually have everything recorded in there. So there are a lot of application of this, and I guess Tennessee and the Wyoming, the government actually recognize this is a movement. But it's just that how long will it take to get to that point? And right now, I think there's a lot of good application. John just shared, I think yesterday or the day before, talking about how do we do angel invest or syndicate together using this kind of a mechanism, right? So I think that's actually the things that I have the most interest with. And I think John mentioned it pretty well. There's a lot of things to do a group together, but I think the fundamental things here is that the blockchain technology behind it, so enable a lot of opportunities. I don't know that is right or wrong there, but I think that is actually essential of the Web 3.0 in my understanding, because it's actually distribute the power of the authority kind of things back to everybody. But again, still, there may be still some things here and there to get it right. But I'm saying that this is the right movement as far as I know. I mean, we have been through Web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. We do like the old days, right? People can do everything on their own, building their own website and share their ideas. But now we have a different kind of technology, more than just HTTP, HTML. Using the blockchain perhaps can help to create a lot of other opportunity. As an investor, I think that's very interesting to see. There's a lot of good company perhaps can actually make a movement to there. So sorry, I probably say a little bit too much there. So my question is mostly, how does this blockchain to actually enable that kind of distributed organization to make it work? I guess. Sorry. So
I think,
John, let me get back to you.
Yeah, that blockchain is the foundation piece, which allows us to put in place statements that are true and that they're true forever, and that they're not owned by anybody else's database, right? So the problem is I go to Amazon, I use one of Amazon's servers, and I build my own private database of something, and I use that to tell the world that this is what truth is. And then I decide to fiddle with the data, or I kill my company and my database gets handed to somebody else who uses it a different way. And now truth becomes relative to the owner of the data and how they're manipulating it. But when I go to sell a house, part of the thing that happens is that I have to register the title with the county. And that's the old-fashioned way of defining truth. I walk into a person, they have a notary, they stamp it. This is the thing that you have to do, which means I have to have that person and all the overhead to make that happen. When I do blockchain, I can do the same thing. And there's a company in Chicago that does this. I do put my title onto the blockchain. Now that's the notary stamping it, making it known to the world that this thing is available. But instead of having to go to the title office and go get the list and flip the pages, I can actually just look it up on blockchain and go, right, and get the validation immediately. On top of that, we have cryptocurrency, which builds on blockchain different kinds of value that is then identified as truth in the blockchain. And then we have on top of that Ethereum or some of these other tokens, which allow us to have computations take place, which are the foundations of smart contracts. So we make an agreement. The agreement is truth. We put the truth onto the blockchain, and then everybody knows what that is. And so then when some certain aspect happens in the world, then that computation can take place, and it's all essentially proven and validated to be true. And there's no possibility of fraud because everything is locked into the blockchain in some way, right? Assuming that blockchain is always able to do what blockchain is intending to.
And what makes all that happen is smart contracts. You'll hear that term, smart contracts, because those smart contracts are what technologists build onto the blockchain. So it's smart contracts. So an NFT is literally a smart contract. It can do a myriad of things. Like there is almost endless options there. And so that smart contract is what John's referring to, that kind of automatically makes things happen. When something happens, the smart contract, it's no one's job to do it. It actually just happens on the blockchain. And you can, again, all that can be coded and built by people, on the blockchain using several different platforms. So it's not just Bitcoin or Ether or, any of those other things. So
yeah, so Brian says in the chat, fraud versus equitability would be an interesting conversation, given most SEC rules exist to establish some notion of equitability and limit actions that are now considered fraud. What do you mean, Brian?
Yeah, I read a book once that I thought was really interesting called it was about Jesse Livermore, basically the greatest, hawk on Wall Street back before the Great Depression. And what I thought was really interesting about that book is it provides this like fictional, but true, but like sort of, I don't know, biopic type of like, through his life, basically talking about his investing strategies and a lot of the things that went on, just illegal today. We have a lot of money in the hands of people that secured money before the SEC was the SEC, before, lots of things have changed in 100 years. And so it's interesting to look at Web3 and look at these DIOs and think, yeah, there's absolutely room to say there's no fraud here because we know exactly who these people are. But I don't know how the DIOs work. If you can lose Bitcoin or DIO as quickly as you can lose Bitcoin by losing your private key, there's obviously rampant opportunity for fraud. There's also things happening at a speed on technology, which is enabled far beyond what is on paper. So paper contracts, due diligence time, you've got to like meet with investors, for example, if you want to, or meet with your prospects if you want to put money in. There are these sort of like real world obstacles that require things to go at a certain pace, which just don't exist anymore. And so there's, it's arguably just as hard as it was maybe 100 years ago to invest in the stock market if you had to be running up and down the street on the curb, like literally like banging people on their head,
Which is the case that actually the way it was, right? They had a trader, they had a guy. That's who you talk to, that person. Yeah.
So there's certainly with the DAO a social dynamic, right? And so let's simplify the equation a little bit, and I'm really sort of very biased in my conversation right now around how I run decisions in the Seattle Angel Conference, right? I have 40 people have a vote. We create a DAO for those 40 people. They each have a vote. Some of them are very quiet and never say anything ever. Some of them are very loud and are saying lots of things all the time. Some of them, hopefully not in any of our current stuff, but some of them are sociopaths and only do what's right for them.
Sure.
And so the consequence is that the social dynamic of decision making inside there is arbitrarily complex based on the personalities of the members, right? And so assuming that everything technologically works, that you are clearly identified as who you are. So there's an ID component of this in the sense of the know your customer, right? Here's my wallet. I know who I am with that wallet. That identifies me. And then through that wallet, I then have a token. And with that token, I'm allowed to engage in logging into a thing because my access point is the token. And then that then lets me see the conversations. That also lets me do the voting. The conversations are the things that lead up to voting. So somewhere in there, we have to have this is how we make a proposal. This is how we discuss the proposal, and all the stupidities of Robert's Rules of Order come into the conversation at some level until we get to the point where, okay, we have decided, right? And everybody votes, and now it's a decision, right? All of that is the social dynamic of a DAO that you can't fix with software, right? But with the software, what you can fix is, I don't actually know who's voting, right? So I have 3 people who are coming to the represent that one vote, and they all decide to vote, then I can't currently track that. If I had a token, then I could track that. And then a bunch of people don't do anything. If I had a token, I would be able to know that that person had voted or not because it would be recorded, right? And so there's mechanisms by which the software make things easier. The number one benefit of that is it seems like you end up removing intermediaries out of the process, and it ends up removing the clerical efforts to keep track of all the transactions. And so you just collapse a bunch of that. So the example that I thought was interesting that we saw at the 601 Club was, I am a manufacturer of windows. I'm going to sell windows to a distributor who's going to then sell them to a contractor who's building a house. Right now, there's a bunch of paper and there's a bunch of trust in that system. And so I have to do the down payment thing, and then I have to do the double checking thing and check the thing. And then that piece of paper has to go back, and then I don't pay for 2-3 weeks as it sits on somebody's desk. And it may be 6 weeks or 9 weeks from the shipping of the window from the manufacturer to the place before all the money settles. But you could put an NFT on that window, and you could buy that window, and you could have a smart contract so that when that person scans the QR code printed on the window, or better yet, there's a guy who actually takes cryptographic pictures of windows and says, this window is exactly this window. And I scan that little thing, and then poof, as soon as I accept it at the job site, all the payments go through. So now instead of a 6-week waiting period, and instead of 4 or 5 hands that had to touch it, it's automatically done, and you don't have to think about it anymore. So any place you have that kind of friction, right? I have to get my driver's license. I have to get a prescription. I have to go and validate something with somebody before I can do this other thing. All of that can be collapsed in some meaningful way. And then what I would like to engage in the conversation with Mike as a thought experiment, because I don't think you've researched Syndicate DAO in any particular depths, but Syndicate DAO is designed to do angel investing, right? It only accepts accredited investors. It only accepts 99 of them, because all of that fits inside. It's basically drawing a circle inside the SEC regulations.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Almost nobody here has any crypto anything. So what's the journey from I don't have anything to I put my whatever resources into a DAO? That DAO then puts the resources into a startup. The startup does its thing, they succeed, the resources come back to the DAO, and then the DAO then distributes the resources to my wallet, right? That journey. Can we talk that out? What has to be there for me to do that? So like I might need a wallet, right?
Yeah, you might need a wallet. That would be for sure.
So
Yeah.
what does that look, talk through as much as you know about
Sure.
that journey.
Okay, so if we went, let's just start from the very get-go. Like, okay, there's 20 of us that will have a DAO they want to start. We're going to all have, a wallet, call it MetaMask or whatever we want to choose. There's several of them.
We don't have one, so pick one and tell us what we need to do.
MetaMask, choose that. It's very popular. It's been secure, ever since it started. So MetaMask is one.
So I want to sort of do a little rabbit hole. MetaMask is a distributed wallet, which is not centralized. If I go get a wallet over at Coinbase, that's a centralized wallet, which is a fundamentally different beast, has different risks associated with it. So Mike is saying buy a distributed wallet or set up a distributed wallet MetaMask. Okay.
Yeah. So for like all this, my personal, how I do mine, right? I have an account on Gemini, right? That's the centralized holder of the crypto that I own is in Gemini right now. It sits there. But I also own the MetaMask wallet because the MetaMask wallet talks to a lot of different other parts and pieces, so that I put money from Gemini, push it to MetaMask, and then from MetaMask I can go lots of different places with MetaMask. So I can put it in a DAO, I can buy an NFT, I can do all that kind of stuff. So so first is get a MetaMask, which is a distributed wallet. That's step one. Now, and by the way, guys, that is not an easy process. It's fraught with bad UX. If anyone's a UX guy, a girl in this room, it's fraught with just bad UX. It's just still very cumbersome. That's going to improve over the years, or over the months, but it's pretty rocky now. I'd consider from a UX standpoint. So I have a MetaMask wallet. Now we have 50 people in our DAO that we want to do something with. We don't know what to do. The next step is going to be.
You skipped a bunch of stuff. I set up a wallet. That doesn't mean I have anything in the wallet.
Well, I already said you have Gemini. Let's just say you have Coinbase.
But I don't
Gemini.
have any crypto anything.
Well, you have to buy crypto at some level. So where are we going to buy?
Okay, so I've set up MetaMask. I have the little foxy guy in the corner of my screen, and I want to put something into it. What am I going to put into it?
So I would, recommend let's do Ether because it's probably the most well-known, and it has the processing fees. Call them processing fees. They call them gas in the world, but the processing fees are sometimes a little high. So that's why some people are actually going away from an Ether. But let's just say Ether today because it's easy.
I'll be right back.
No worries. But so we have now bought some. So we go to Gemini, create an account in Gemini. We go buy Ether. So I deposit $100 from my bank into Gemini, right? Then I go and say, oh, I want to buy Ether. So then I buy $100 worth of Ether, right? Which is actually a very simple transaction on Gemini. They've done a good job of that. So that's quite easy. Now I have $100 of Ether. Great. So with that $100 of Ether, I can do certain things with. Like I said, I can buy an NFT, I can put it in a DAO, I can do et cetera, et cetera. So, and by the way, Gemini, there's lots of, Coinbase is another very, very popular one. Gemini, there's several what I call centralized places to buy crypto and hold your crypto from that standpoint. So lots of choices there. But we're going to use Gemini just because that's how it's off my head. So now we have a Gemini account. We have $100 of Ether in that account. And we actually have a MetaMask, which I can then transfer my money from Gemini to MetaMask. And again, it's not hard, but it's a little confusing if you've never done it. But there's lots of videos that show us how to do it today. So I've now, let's say I've taken $50 of my money from my Ether on Gemini, and I've transferred that into my MetaMask. So now MetaMask has $50 of Ether. It's an Ether, right? It's nothing else. It's Ether right now. $50 of Ether, and I can do whatever I want with that. Now, let's just say we want to do the DAO. That step is, okay, before we ever do a DAO, we have to agree, and we talked briefly about this, on governance. Like, how is it going to be governance? And this is where there is so many choices there's a myriad of choices of how we govern that. Now, there are some basics that is, I can tell you just through kind of statistics over the time of the DAOs have been around, what we've seen is, and many of these DAOs may have, hundreds of members or even thousands of members, and there's less than 5% of the people that actually seek to vote. They all have a vote, by the way. They all have a vote, but many of them don't vote because they're not really actively involved. And so 5% of that, think about it, if there's 100 members, 5 of those members are actually going to be doing most of the work. Again, that is not unusual in the real world. It's that 80-20 rule, right? It's even a little lower in this. So
90-10. Yep.
Yeah, 90-10. Yeah, 90-10 or even 95-5. So we now have a DAO that we're starting to put together, and we've formalized the organization rules. Now, let's talk a bit about what those rules are. Like I said, there's lots of things we can use, but we do need some governance things in that world. And again, remember, everyone has a vote. It's not just what John and I have.
So whenever we create an LLC, we have to agree to that as well, right?
Correct.
So the thing about an LLC is that it's much less prescribed about what we have to do than a C Corp, right? A C Corp, you have to have a board, you have to have a treasurer, there's roles, and the roles have responsibility. That's all defined at a level, right? And LLC is less defined. I can set up my LLC so that it's 1 vote per member, regardless of wealth. Yep. So I have information rights, I have voting rights, and I have distribution rights. And those I have to decide on in some way, right, in an LLC. And that problem is exactly the same problem as I have a DAO, right?
Yeah.
Who gets the vote, who gets the information, and who gets the distribution of assets, right? Yeah. There's also a membership question. Who gets to come in, and how do they get to come in? Is there a filter at all? And who gets to get kicked out, and who gets to kick who out, right? And so if you have somebody who is not a good player, there's just because you own a token doesn't mean you get to keep the
exactly
token, right?
All those things are decisions that have to be made and are made. And I can tell you some early things that happened over the past, just this last probably 12 months, is a VC or person with a large amount of money would come in to a DAO, and this has happened several times. It's going to happen less because people have figured out how to not let it occur. But they come in with a large chunk of money, and for the most part, those DAOs have been pro rata, vote by how much money you put in. So if I walk in with $100,000 and I'm the whale in the room, I now, in all intents and purposes, have complete control of that because I have voting of all my $100,000, which John put in 100 and everybody else put in, say, $10,000. So I'm way control. So what's happened in the past is people have done that and then, voted on something and basically liquidated the DAO. I mean, honestly, just liquidated the DAO and they got to keep it all. So those are the bad players, and those are the bad things that happen. Now it's somewhat called easy.
A hostile takeover.
Exactly. Somewhat easy in the DAO world several months ago. And now it's much harder because people have now figured out, okay, this can occur. So therefore, when we don't allow for big money to come in like this and have voting rights for all of it, they'll actually say, okay, you only get voting rights for X amount, right? So then it keeps it equitable amongst the players. But again, there's lots of things, as John said, that have to be thought through of a DAO. There are basics, and there's there's several websites that will actually help you create a DAO, pretty quickly. They're templated, but there's they'll ask, lots of questions in that process, just like there is today. You can go create a C Corp online at LegalZoom or whatever, and, they'll ask you several questions. You create the LLC or, C Corp or S Corp, whichever one you want to do. So same thing is starting to happen with the DAO world, where you're able to start using templates and they're helping you through that process. So now let's just say we figured out all those rules for the DAO, and now we have a DAO with 100 people. We have rules. We have some money. Some people put money in, some people don't. We have a purpose, which is obviously the main thing. A DAO has a purpose. The purpose is, like John maybe mentioned previously, that hey, we want to buy the Constitution. the actual paper Constitution was attempted to purchase through a DAO, although they didn't win the bid to purchase that paper constitution, they did raise a boatload of money to do it. So,
and let's dive into that just a little bit. They raised a boatload of money, and then they couldn't give it back because the processing fees to give it back was more than the people had put in, and so it's essentially a stranded asset, right?
Yeah.
So
at least
talk to me a little bit about the ratio about resources I put in versus the cost of making a transaction. It seems like the cost of making a transaction should be like really, really cheap.
Yeah.
So how did they, put in their $100 and not be able to get their $99 back?
Yeah. I don't know how they did that original one with the Constitution. I think it's actually called the Constitution DAO, if I remember right. I don't remember what they, how they structured it, but remember this was what, 9 months ago or something when they did this. So early
ago.
Yeah, it seems like an eternity ago in this crypto world. So I don't know what they did, but I know that since then there are again several other Polygon. There's several other blockchain technologies that can be used that is dramatically lower the cost to transact some of that business, right? Smart contract stuff, right?
So the one that people keep throwing at me is called Solana.
Yep, Solana, and Polygon is another one, the popular one, but Solana is absolutely popular. Yeah, yeah.
So Brian asked a question in the chat to sort of validate what a wallet is. I think what a wallet is a binding mechanism to bind ownership of a person to ownership of a resource. And so it basically is a pile of data of saying, I own this. And so it's just the place that you keep the token because you need some inordinately long number to represent your token. And you need a place to put that and hold it to say, I hold that thing, right? I think you could essentially print that long number out into a QR code and then, transact it that way and have actually a paper wallet of things. And so long as the mice don't eat it, it's, very secure. But it's basically, there's a unique prime number combination kind of thing that is very, very long that people can't remember that you have to put somewhere so you can transact it.
Yeah, and now even for MetaMask, for instance, they use 8, if I remember right, 8 words, 8 different words, literally words like cat, dog, whatever. There's 8 different words that are in your, that is what they consider your password. So it's not like 8 characters, it's literally like 8 words. And I literally have it written down and I have it digitally. So I've got it different places. So, in case I don't lose it, because there's no way I'm going to remember those 8 words. I'm not going to remember them. So the wallet, the wallet for like Gemini's wallet, right? That I have my crypto, most of my crypto is right there. Is that wallet? And then the MetaMask is obviously the wallet that allows you to basically go to different places. Much easier, granted, much easier than Gemini, normally much easier. Because people are writing code that interacts with MetaMask, right? It makes it easier to deal with MetaMask versus dealing with a Gemini or a Coinbase. So
I see Brian's hands up.
Yeah, I was interested in if there's comparables here to a world that I don't know if anybody lived in, where there were stock certificates and like that certificate owned something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, stock certificate, right?
I have a pile of paper in a box that is still a pile of paper in a box because somewhere in that pile of paper is a stock certificate that I want. And I just don't have time to sort through the 500 other pieces of paper.
Yeah. It's funny when I sold a company, I'm trying to remember what year that was. That was about 2000, I think 3 or 4. And in that transaction, a small public company bought our company. And in that transaction, I got stock certificates, actual stock certificates, piece of paper.
What do you do with them?
I actually still have a copy of it because I thought it was just so fun, right? I mean, what you have to do is you have to send that to E-Trade, and E-Trade can actually make it digital. It takes a while. It's not just overnight. There's actually paper that have to be confirmed, and provenance, again, this is provenance issue. This could all be solved with a smart contract, but in that back in 2004, I got it and then I sent it to E-Trade and then someone had to verify that it was actually real. It was, several steps to verify that that was, my however many shares there were I got, and they were actually mine. So
I think that's my favorite analogy I've heard, because stock certificates, like at paper value for most people, are generally worthless. You're like, what am I going to do with it in a practical sense? Which is the same thing as your key, until it's in the right hands, and all of a sudden it's incredibly lucrative. And
Sarah Lee says that that's what she actually does. She works at a transfer agent.
Sure. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's what I had to use, a transfer agency. Yeah.
And our wallet was that safe box at the bank where we kept them all.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Probably having a safe box with your 8 words for your wallet is not a bad answer, right? So they're in any case, I don't think we got to the answer of why the fees are what they are, or what percentage, how much money do I end up burning by choosing ETH over Solana, right?
Yeah, so they call them gas fees is what they call them in the world.
Are they predictable?
They're not predictable. They're predictable in the fact that we know they go up and down. I can tell you, real world, when I transferred my ETH to, when I transferred my ETH, it was sitting in my MetaMask. I transferred that turn that to Decentraland, which is the Mana coin. It's a different coin, but therefore I had to transfer ETH to Mana coin, right? So that transfer, I watched that for at least a week. And if I remember, I was transferring, I think it was $1,000. And it was costing me anywhere from $160 all the way down to $40. That fluctuated all the time throughout the day. And it's based on the blockchain, what the traffic that's on the blockchain is what is affecting that number, that gas number going up and down. And it's
so as a fee, I can move things in Visa for 3%.
Yeah.
So this seems like a inordinately high overhead for something that's digitally enhanced in some way.
That's correct. That's why there is so much opportunity, and people are starting to fill that opportunity with the Cardanos and other things that transfer at a dramatically lower cost. Yeah. So it's just,
can you get all of the benefits of smart contracts of Ethereum, but without the high gas prices in something else?
Oh, yeah. Yes, you can absolutely, because
like what are the 3 alternatives that are?
Polygon is definitely one. Cardano is another. Those are the two. That I
say it
kind
again.
of follow.
Polygon and what?
Polygon, known as MATIC is what the coin number is. Matic, but Polygon is one, and then Cardano is another very popular one. Both of those are something I kind of follow and watch.
Okay.
So they are definitely cheaper, cheaper than ETH. And by the way, guys, the ETH cost is going down and will continue to go down, partly because they're getting more efficient in the network, partly because there is more people doing other things. So obviously it's not everything doing Ether, which a year ago there was a boatload of volume on Ether. And now, there's still a lot of volume, but there actually is other people taking market share from that.
So one of the things that happens as we do all of this transaction with stocks is, I create my little tiny company, I get my stocks, I put them on a marketplace and nobody cares. So I have a liquidity problem. Mm-hmm. And so we have a liquidity problem with tokens as well, right?
Absolutely.
I go and try to get myself a token and I can't get a token because everybody's using it for something else. And so there's a notion called staking, right? What is staking?
Basically, to keep it really simple, it's putting it somewhere where you're not accessing it. It's like putting it in a CD. Actually, that's probably good enough. It's like putting it in a CD where you're going to get interest because you can still get interest from it. but you're not necessarily having complete access to it.
So you agree to lock it up for a year and then
Or, yeah,
get interest during that year because you agreed to lock it up and let other people use it while you're not using it.
yeah, real world example, Gemini, part of Gemini is you can stake, and I've done this with what they call earn. I've put most of my coins that have the ability to earn interest. I've put them in there. So I can't necessarily right now go trade those because they're not available for trading. They're in my account, but they're not available for trading. But they are gaining interest, right? And there's different interest levels for different coins. So that's part of what I do with Gemini as my coins, right? I'm able to generate interest, and some is 1%, some as high as 10, 10. I think was one of them was I think 10.5%, which is significant, right?
Yeah,
it's able to earn interest.
Right. So now this year, given that we have tax season coming up on Monday, and on the tax form, it says, tell us about your crypto stuff. How are you going to think about the reporting on that interest?
It's just like any other interest. It's the same thing with my E-Trade account. Exact same thing. I treat it the same thing. Would I make this year or would I lose this year? And I had a really good year last year on my stock side. And I had I would say just okay year on the other side for crypto. I mean, I didn't really lose much, but I didn't really make much either.
Right.
So this year's hopefully be different.
So I put all of this set of resources, which are tokens of some kind, into the DAO, and I can put any kind of token into the DAO. It doesn't have to be ETH; it could be anything.
Yeah, or create your own. If you could create your own DAO if you really wanted to.
Or
create your own token. Sorry, create your own tokens. Yeah.
And then I would have to have some mechanism to convert one token to another. But okay, so now I agree that I'm going to invest in that thing over there.
Okay.
Right. And the company is just a company. So that company better get a wallet, right?
Yeah, I mean, in that transaction, let's just say
somehow I have to take all of these tokens and turn them into US dollars in their bank account.
Yeah. So let's just say we can make the concept easier. Let's say the DAO has $10,000 in it, right? And we have that, and we've, as a group, that's how much money we put into it. And it's pro rata, whatever you have a token for every dollar you put in. So some people have more tokens than others. Now we see John's company. We think it's really interesting. We want to put $10,000, or we want to put $9,500 into John's company. So that is, obviously validate John's company is real, all the due diligence process, which you have to do. We would then transfer the $9,500. And now there's many kind of choices on how we do that, because we could, again, let's just say it's in Ether. We can easily convert Ether to money, right? That's the Gemini, any of these, that's actually quite easy to do. So I can go to my Gemini account and turn, 2 Ether, which is $7,000 ish, into money, like instantaneously. It shows up as money the next day, right? So that's easy to basically transfer the money to the DAO to John's company, because it is digital. But then once we convert that to US dollars, it's a transaction. It's an electronic transaction.
Then, as a startup, as a part of my assets in my startup, it might make sense to have a wallet where I can accept tokens.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
Just as a foundational.
Yeah,
service.
I think that's.
I get a bank account. I get a wallet.
Wallet. Yeah, I think that is actually should be part of the process. All of us should be looking towards it going forward. Like, we should all have a wallet, whether it's Gemini or Coinbase or any of these other places. We should have one of those ready to accept digital coin.
Okay. And so I am not actually giving them dollars. I'm giving them tokens that are worth some thingy, right?
Sure.
Now, in the volatility of the market, as I hand you the ETH at 7,000 and they go have a beer and they come back 6,000.
Sure.
Maybe I should have handed them something that was a stable coin.
That's most likely what's happening. The smart people are probably doing that almost instantaneously, right? They get the money from, you know, the DAO, which was, say it's Ether, and they, you know, it's $7,000. They get it. They, you know, the very next minute they convert that to a stable coin. And for you, again, the stable coin is a coin that is based on for like a US dollar or you know, or a British pound, or it's based on a other fiat coin, fiat dollar. It doesn't fluctuate. I mean, it doesn't fluctuate any more than, you know, our dollars that we spend today, right? The fiat, what is a fiat? Fiat is just, our dollars are called a fiat because it's backed by something. At least it used to be backed by something. It's not backed by anything.
Well, fiat means that it was created by decree.
Yeah,
And the
centralized.
Decreed it has value, therefore it has value.
Yeah, it's a centralized form of money. Yeah.
Right. And so then I take the money, all the tokens that I get into my entity, into my DAO, I convert them into stablecoin right away because I don't want it fluctuating as we spend the 3 months deciding which company. And then I transfer that stablecoin into the wallet of the company, and then they put it in their bank when they want.
Do whatever they want with it.
Right.
Yeah. And they could actually keep it coin if they wanted to. We could actually, let's say we don't pay them in stable coin, we pay them in ETH, right? And they can get the ETH and they can roll the dice and think that the ETH is going to go up, and that's fine. I mean, there was many companies back in the heyday of the ICO world, which is, you know, a year and a half ago, that, you know, they made boatloads of money on paper because they kept, say, Bitcoin or Ether and didn't sell it. But then obviously that changed. So they, at the end of the day, did they make money or lose money?
What is an ICO?
It's the initial coin offering, which would have been the heyday was about a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago, where everyone was doing.
With most of the ICOs,
they were illegal.
Well, they're not illegal.
Well, they're not illegal, but they were illegal back in the
regulated.
day. Back in the day, most people were doing them
They were doing them badly.
badly.
So anytime you sell ownership in a piece of a company, or you sell a loan to somebody and do a debt instrument with a company, that is regulated by the SEC. And if you're using Reg D 506B, like angel investors like to do, then the ICO requires you to do a bunch of actions to stay inside that box, which is what Syndicate DAO is doing. You could structure Syndicate DAO as an ICO if you wanted, but you have to stay inside the little box defined by the exemption in the SEC, or you have to pay the money to register it, right?
Yeah. And that's what people just didn't do back in the day. They just didn't register. And
we'll ask for forgiveness.
Yes, that was their philosophy. Let's do it.
Turns out that the federal government doesn't have a lot of that to go around.
Some people got forgiven, some people did not.
Yep. All right. So the company then goes off and does what it's going to do. And my current experience, it's 10 to 12 years before they do what they're going to do. And so then they have to remember their wallet for 12 years. And then they have to remember my wallet for 10 years. So how are they going to remember my wallet?
Well, with the smart contract, that will always be a known transaction, right? So I will know
the contract.
I will know that John got the money, and I will know that forever. I can always look that up to say, John, we sent you $9,500 on April 14th, 2022. And there's no way to deny that. It's part of the smart contract. So you'd always be able.
But so I have a wallet for my DAO. I have a wallet for the company. I have a wallet for each of the investors.
Yeah.
And 12 years later, that all has to line up, and everybody has to remember their 8 words to get into their wallet. And then that process has to unwind, and then poof, I get a bunch of stable coin into my box, or I get ETH into my box, or whatever we decided we were going to do.
The transaction itself is actually quite easy, and it would happen quite fast. Getting the money out from an individual actually is determined by you keeping track of your wallet, because the smart contract forces all this to happen somewhat instantaneously. Like if John gave us the $9,500 plus the return, which let's just sell it to 10 grand. So let's say we got $20,000 back from our $9,500 investment. Well, that would almost happen instantaneously to everyone's wallet, because it would go into the DAO. The DAO would then push it out to the the people where put the money in. And that would be done. Now, if you lost your wallet, you lost your wallet, but the money's still there.
Well, so what is the trigger that caused that contract to activate?
Well, the trigger would be your whatever you'll be a sale or something that liquidated from your side.
Well, I need
Right.
to have an oracle that says an event happened, right?
Yeah, there's some event that happened which
So
you sold the company or
somewhere, I sell the company, but somewhere I have to register that I sold the company, and the act of registering that in a place that's visible digitally would then trigger the contract, and we would have to define what that would look like, right?
that would be in the smart contract actually created, from the very get-go, which again is becoming much more mainstream. It's not mainstream
Well,
today, but
How do you know if a company is alive or dead?
that's a good question.
I can move bank accounts. You can't watch my bank account. I can move around. I can move from state to state. How do you know that my company is dead?
Good question. There's probably some mechanism in there that
Well, right now it's the registration with the state, right? And I go look at the state registration and see whether I've kept that up to date or not, right?
Yeah, I can check your EIN number. That's pretty easy today. I'm thinking 10 years from now.
Right. So somewhere there needs to be a registry for these deals, and they need to be pinged on an annual basis or whatever basis, so that everybody says, yeah, everything's active. I know everything. And I just sent out email to all of my 500 alumni, and I have about 15 that their emails have bounced.
Sure.
And then you think about that for a second. They have investments based on those emails.
Sure.
And so our notification to them about, hey, you have to sign this piece of paper to get your money, just bounced, right? So we have that problem right now with emails. So one of the things that we might do is to use ENS. What is ENS?
I don't know.
The Ethereum name service.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so I could create a,
you could totally do that.
sgdao.eth. And now I can remember that because it's very simple. I have to keep that up to date. I can then connect that to my wallet. And so I don't lose track of the wallet, right? Because I've got this thing. Even if I move wallets around, the .eth will do the job for me, right?
Yeah. And there's an opportunity, John, that you just mentioned. There's an opportunity that will probably be done at some point in time. And there's this database that has like all the active DAOs in it. Again, there's going to be some registration that's going to have to happen because it's going to have to happen. So there's an opportunity. Somebody's going to create that. And
so I think that's the business opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a startup business, just like the startup that's going around Chicago registering all of the home sales onto a
I saw that. Yeah.
That same thing can happen for business registrations, and any pile of data that's currently kept by the government that says this thing exists and it's in this state is something that's a business opportunity for a startup to simplify and automate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No question.
Driver's licenses, home
all that stuff.
ownership, vaccines,
sure.
all of that is possible to put on the blockchain and then create some level of digital simplicity, right? Although apparently we have lots of rough edges on user design and a certain amount of failure of no mechanism to recover when you forget things.
Yeah. It's still the Wild West. There's still a lot of things changing on a pretty quickly basis. And
so 12 years from now, we hit the button on our webpage that says the company has been sold. Here's the wallet. And then poof, it distributes it to the DAO. Now the DAO has this contract that then says the company is ended, the DAO is ended. Thank you very much. Put it into everybody's wallet, poof, gone, right? And it would just happen, and there would be. So we've been fighting for 6 months with the process by which we get things back from one of our investments, right? For Seattle Angel Company.
Oh, sure.
That transaction of I sell the company and I get paid is not a 2-day transaction. right? But it could be a one-day transaction.
Yeah.
If you do it with the DAO.
Yeah, with the DAO. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in theory, it should be somewhat instantaneous because the smart contracts be written that when X happens, Y happens, and X, all these conditional things would happen, boom, 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 down the road. Yeah.
How
And
do I build an oracle? Sarah
Yeah.
Lee is taking
Yeah.
XYZ stock here and moving it to XYZ stock there. If there's a digital there over there, and she
Mhm.
takes the piece of paper here and wants to transfer it, she just needs an oracle that says this now exists digitally, and then put the contract can go into play, right?
Yeah.
How would
Yeah.
we build an oracle? And more importantly, how will we build an oracle that was not centralized?
Yeah. Well, it's, you would again you'd have that provenance issue, right? You would have to solve the provenance issue. Like, is this real? Is it, is whatever we've said, is it real? So that could be solved by an NFT. That's not rocket science. So there's your start, and then everything else is built off of that, right? I mean, it's just that those conditional things that happen after that turn into to validate these things. And there's things that you can convert Ether into 1,700 other coins somewhat instantaneously. It will cost you a transaction fee, but it happened. You can do it right now. I mean,
What's the name of a couple of those?
There's one that's kind of new out of Italy that I bumped onto called Swappy. It's pretty interesting. You can literally take Ether or Bitcoin or Sand or any of these coins and turn them into something else, a stable coin or whatever. It's just you're converting X to Y, and it happens, somewhat instantaneously, and it's just what you would expect. And kind of, in the old, when you arrive at the airport, in Puerto Vallarta 20 years ago, you'd go to the exchange window, you'd exchange your US dollar for your Mexican money, and then you go on down there and buy your cervezas, right?
Well, except it's not quite like that, because the US federal government entity called the IRS has this notion that cryptocurrency is not a currency, but it's an asset. And as an asset, the exchange is a taxable event, which that's not true when you go to Puerto Vallarta.
Sure.
Right.
That is true. Yeah.
So the fact that currency and assets are not fungible together, you can't say one is the same as the other, right? And the tax law is distinctly different on those.
But all these coins are all assets, right? They're all considered assets. So you're converting it.
An asset. If you take that asset and pass it to another asset, there's no 1031 of crypto.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't pass it around, right?
Yeah. So right now, when you convert that Ether asset to a Sand asset, which is Decentraland, it's just one asset to the other asset. Like you say, there's no 501 or whatever that 1031B exchange.
1031 exchange, yeah.
Yeah, 1031 exchange. So that doesn't exist yet, at least at this point in time. Yeah.
All right. So did we get to the end of that pathway? Got everything done? Are there, NFTs? I think of them as a mechanism by which you fractionalize things, right? I basically say there is this thing like a house. I'm going to divide it up into 100 pieces of a house.
Sure.
And now I have ownership fractions like a timeshare, right?
Timeshare. Yeah.
And then we can say, how it is I use my ownership with that asset in whatever way. Someone else that I was talking to thinks that's not possible. Ownership is 100%. You own this, right? And so I think we're not all on the same page about what NFTs represent, but they basically represent a little piece of truth about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a thing, this is bound to you. If you own the NFT, if it's in your wallet, then that NFT represents your unique relationship to this entity. It could be membership in a club, It could be ownership of a timeshare. It could be ownership of a vehicle, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of places where you have things where you need to manage that relationship, you could turn that into NFTs and make that go.
Yeah, that's why art was kind of the first kind of, it's just the easiest for most people to even understand. It's easy to understand. It's like, because
And it's also relatively high value, right? So
yeah, it's because the provenance is so important in art,
bite
right?
you.
Yeah, provenance is so, it's the key, and most art is the provenance, is verifying provenance. And there's people that make a living just verifying provenance. So as well, the wine world is the same thing, but art is super driven by provenance. So that's where that NFT can really disrupt that industry a lot, and it already has. Honestly, it's already happening. So So yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, this is Dinus. John, just quickly add 2 cents. NFT is not just for the fractionalization of an asset. You could own, let's say, a particular image or video or certain file completely. Don't share with anybody else. That's a possibility as well. For example, if you see the news, the media, or the OpenSea marketplace, there are a lot of what they call collections. Basically, they're pictures the artists create and share on the marketplace platforms. People can buy and own. You don't have to share that with anyone else. You buy it, you own it. Obviously, sometime later, you don't want it anymore. You can sell it on a secondary marketplace, like transfer to another person. That's totally feasible. Very commonly, you see a lot of collections or collection series, which means you have a lot of different pictures or work that fall into the same theme. You know, for example, the Bored Apes Yacht Club. That's one example. Bunch of apes pictures. They look generally the same, but they have different variation of colors, background, etc. But there are also other type of NFT that are called one-of-ones, which means it's not a collection series. It's just one. It's similar to the concept of the singers can release a single song, the singles, or can release an album where they have 10 or 12 songs in an album. Right? Either way is a possibility. And NFT is being used in all kinds of different domains.
So I'm sorry, I missed pieces of that, but I was hearing you speak about ownership as being bound to NFTs, but what about the notion of membership or the notion of access, where it's not so much ownership of the thing, but it's simply being blessed as one of the people. Like if I were a member of a registered tribe, right? So I have a federally registered tribe, and it's very important that the tribe maintain a role of its members. Then I could create an NFT which represented ownership or membership in the tribe, and once they said I'm a tribal member, that NFT is the thing that does that, right? And I can then set rules on that so that gives me access to physical rooms even, right, that I might not get otherwise, because it's essentially turns into a key, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right now, we are seeing a very commonly trend where we're tying the tokens, which is purely virtual, now tying to some real world benefits. Again, it occurs in many different domains. Can be museums, can be celebrities, can be sports events or venues. For example, our Seattle Center, the football center, if they create an NFT tokens and then issue or share this to other general public audience, and people buy the token, will be a member of that club or venue, and they have additional benefits. For example, go tour around in the venue or see some players after the main match, for example. Same thing with celebrities, right? They do this a lot. They want reward back to the fans for their loyalty, for their purchase and support. They could, allow people to act at the backstage, shake hands, give autographs, selfie pictures, all kinds of things. They can provide this kind of tangible benefits to the token holders that will provide more incentives, better engagement with this, community as they learn about this new space, new assets, new tokens. I think that's a good trend because that actually can bring a better understanding to this general community who don't know the crypto space really well to begin with. That's a very common trend we're seeing right now.
What happens in terms of, you know, the public registry of the NFT, and the fact that I'm a Seahawks fan ends up getting publicly listed into the blockchain?
Yeah, most of these NFT projects are using the public blockchains. Mostly it's Ethereum, number one market share right now. Secondly is the Polygon, which is catching up. Sorry, Solana is catching up right now quickly. And these transactions, token, wallet address, smart contracts, they're all publicly available. As in the broader speaking, the smart contract, as well as the wallet address, they're all publicly available as long as the project itself or token itself is written to the underlying public blockchains. You know, any Ethereum address, Ethereum wallet, some of the other major blockchains, it's publicly available. If I have your address, I can see kind of your balance right now. You know,
everything you own, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Like, do you own Bitcoin? Do you own Ethereum? Do you own Solana or other Ethereum-based tokens? I can see the type, I can see the balance and everything. Similar for transactions. If you send a transaction to Mike or to Brian today or yesterday or last week, I can see that transaction like a log, like database entry on the blockchain. There's a service called a Blockchain Explorer. If you just Google online, you can see a bunch of main website. For example, etherscan.io is one blockchain explorer to see the address, the smart contract, the activities on the blockchain tied to particular person or entity. Those are publicly available. And that's the main purpose of these public blockchains.
Right, but that's what makes the request on the tax form this year so uncomfortable, is that they can scan the blockchain and see what I have, and you're supposed to declare what you have. And if you are not keeping track and you say the wrong thing, that you sign at the bottom that this is accurate. And now you're at risk for fraud with the federal government, which, again, forgiveness in the federal government is relatively short supply. Mm-hmm. So that part makes me nervous. Does it make anybody else nervous?
I'll give it 2 cents. I can share the time with other people too. I think overall speaking, the government, the IRS, is trying to catch up with the crypto space, NFT space. There have been a lot of debates in the past couple of years, to your point earlier, you know, among the different federal regulation agencies. You know, there's SEC, there's CFTC, there's IRS, even Treasury. They're all debating about how do you define crypto tokens and now NFTs, new asset class. And they couldn't agree with each other for a long time. That's why recently, if you watch the news, President Biden gave an executive order asking these federal agencies to coordinate with each other. Hopefully they can come up to some sort of consensus agreement how to define the cryptos, NFTs, and then have the right regulation coming out, right? It's work in progress for years, but they're getting there slowly. In terms of the tax perspective, obviously IRS has a lot of say in this domain. Even the IRS has spent a lot of time trying to debate with different people, companies like Coinbase, for example, one of the largest exchanges in the world and regulated in the US. They have some sort of agreement already. From my understanding is, you know, if you transact like stock exchange, you know, you buy and sell like trading activities, and you're liable for the taxable gains. However, if you buy token and just hold it in your wallet, you're not selling. You know, you're holding it in a wallet, you're not liable for that tax perspective. So I think that's overall speaking reasonable. But like I said, I think things are moving fast in the crypto space. Now NFT is kind of another bullet train, you know, hitting the space. IRS and other state agencies need a lot of time to learn and catch up.
Hey,
but the transaction that we just talked about doing the syndicate DAO transaction is using tokens as currency, not using them as an asset. So you're not holding them forever. You're actually doing a transaction. I take my US dollars, I put them into this token, which is an asset, which then goes to the other side, which then gets converted back out. That's taxable activity, right?
Well, if you invest, basically it's considered a buy action, right? If you invest and buy, if you hold them, don't sell, don't exit yet, I don't think you're liable for the tax piece.
But in order to move the money from me to the other company and back again, we were doing transactions where we were converting them from one wallet to another wallet, which is the equivalent of selling.
Well, if you just move between wallets, that isn't equal to selling. It's like you move your money from JP Morgan
if I don't own both wallets, it is.
Well, yeah, if you actually, if it's sent to a different person's wallet, also depends on the nature of the activities. For example, if I can send you some money through PayPal or through Zelle on my Chase bank account, that's not a taxable event, right? It's personal transfer.
But the currency, dollars are currency. PayPal is treating it like a currency, but the federal government is treating it like an asset class, as an asset. So that means the transfer of ownership of an asset is a taxable event. So you have to keep track of when you bought it and what you sold it for, and you have to record that. And then that becomes a thing for the IRS to pick at you about. That's the little part that makes me all squirrely, right? Is that
I agree with that piece. Sorry, Mike, I'll be quick. I agree with that piece, John. Similar to even USD currencies, if you look at the news, banks and PayPal's, some of the wallets, they agree with the IRS saying they're going to track any transaction for over $600, right? If I send some money, $700 to my friend, using PayPal or wallet, that'll be tracked by PayPal. But eventually, whether that's a taxable event, I don't think it's set in stone yet, because it will be, some occasions or use cases, you just sending money to your friends or family members. They're not, business activities or investment actions. It's just personal transfers. Whether PayPal or IRS will go after you, define that as a taxable event, I think that's TBD, at least in my understanding. Crypto side will be a lot more tricky because, everyone has a little different opinion and they're trying to figure out as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns. A lot of unknowns there. Lots and lots of unknowns. Kristen.
I have a very tactical question. One of the things that I'm looking at is we have this database we have a sort of this community of suppliers, right? And they're selling to enterprise buyers. And I don't want to create yet another database of suppliers. One of the things I love about Web3 is it allows people to own their own data and to provide their own data. And so creating yet another database of suppliers, and because there's all sorts of them out there and it's a pain to keep them up to date or whatever. So I'm just checking to see whether or not I'm understanding all this right. Like, is that, I'm thinking about like right now, if I register my company's address with Google, and so then it's on Google locations, and now we've got one place to enter it, but Google owns it, and I don't like that, right? I don't like that Google owns my address. I really want my address to stay with me and to be owned by me. And so I've been thinking that this might be a solution for that, but I just want to check my understanding.
Are you saying that you, because let's just say you had a domain, right? It's just a domain name. You obviously own that. It's, maybe it's sitting on GoDaddy or somewhere, as a registrar, but you own it. Are you saying that, is that scenario where you own that domain the same scenario that says, yeah, I own my address, like physical address of my street address? Is that, am I trying to figure out that question more than I'm?
Similar, but it's like, everything that describes my business and what it does. So the domain name would be part of it, the description of kind of my mission statement maybe, and the description of the products and services I own. Like right now, I'm like managing all that information across all these different channels, and it's a pain in the butt, right? And what I really want, and especially for small businesses that are trying to make themselves look bigger. So how do we make that so that it's an asset that's owned by them and then can be shared with the community?
So instead of having a web page have a blockchain chunk of data that says this is everything you need to know, and then build a web page engine which reads that blockchain bit, and then when you ask the question over on that website, sit up on the blockchain and makes it pretty.
Totally, that's totally it.
You could use your little app to do the same thing, and it would never touch an HTML anything.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that would get the desired result. It's not user friendly at this point, but give us 3 or 4 years, it'll probably be pretty user friendly.
or we have developers in our community that are connected that would build that for a price. So
exactly.
That's easy.
Okay, and then a follow-on question.
It's just a simple matter of money.
Yeah, there's that. And then a follow-on question is, another big issue when a company is selling to an enterprise is that the enterprise is like, oh yeah, we'll pay you in 90 days. And the small business is like, yeah, I can't do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether some of these NFTs might be a way for those transactions to work without that happening. Because, right, the big business doesn't want to pay the money until they know that the products have been delivered, and the small business doesn't want to ship until they've been paid. And
Absolutely.
No, that one directly is solved already.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's already solved. It's just a smart contract, but the only challenge here is we have to have the enterprise agree to it.
You have to get the enterprise accounting department to implement it.
Yeah. So that's going to take us some time, but that absolutely is solved yesterday. That is easy. Like between you and I, we can set that up. Between you and I and John, we can set that up like within a day. So when that transaction happened, it would just automatically fill whoever owed whoever the next day, right? We could do that right now.
Again, the magic part is the oracle that says, yes, I accept the thing, whatever that is. As soon as that button gets pressed and, you know, the flag gets posted on the blockchain that the button's been pressed, then everything else happens.
Hey, I just wanted to say, I just posted in the chat, there's a YouTube link, and it's the hour video of it's two early guys in the space, but I just found it extremely interesting. It talks about the early days. It's not even a year old, but it talks about the early days of these NFTs and how they were created. And both of these guys that did it are arguably, you know, top 10 type people, super, super, super smart. And I would take an hour and read and listen to that video. It's really quite good, and it helps explain some of the basics pretty straightforward. You don't have to be a rocket science to be in this space like years to understand what they're talking about. It's pretty straightforward stuff, but I would highly recommend it. It's well worth the hour spent to watch it.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions?
Dennis.
Hey, so yeah, I really appreciate all these details. It helped me to understand the space better. But I'm just wondering a little bit, maybe a very high level. So I remember the old days. I'm kind of old. I think most of us are, other than John. We have a lot of things in the past. Remember in the Web 1.0, we have to build our own server to host our services, right? Like a bulletin board system, like the website and everything. So you have to do that at your home. So you own everything on your side, right? You have a little bit distributed power layer because you own whatever you present to the World Wide Web. So I think we are trying to going through these Web 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Now it becomes even more complicated if you want to do this at home, right? You need to have that power, that energy, and that kind of resources, and build that as a truly distributed and giving the power back to everybody. So even though we have donors here, maybe we can use the AWS as the powerhouse behind it. But still, so you have some.
You have a device here that's 10,000 times more powerful than the little stupid servers we were putting together at Web 1.0.
Right.
You can put all of this blockchainy stuff onto the cell phone and carry. You want personal control over your personal data. It's right there, and it's connected to the whole world, right?
Right. So I think a hardware power and everything is there. I'm just talking about the software and the pieces, the knowledge layer. How do you make this easier for everybody can do on their own, right? And all these control things. Some people really like to have the ownership, but once they get into trouble, you need to get somebody to help you out, right? Those are the things. Maybe it's actually push the people a little bit late to adopt this technology. So if you give people a little bit safety sense of protection there, potentially you can push this adoption a little bit faster. Right now, there's a lot of buzzwords, fluctuation, and everything about these assets, and we talk about the governments behind this taxation and the registration and everything. So I think that might be something we are seeing at the early stage of this revolution. I think for sure. So my question is actually, is this a really distributed phenomena, or we just seeing this as a speculation? Because maybe by the end of the day, you still need to use.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah. That's too bad. That's a good question. You know, it's
Really
distributed
good question.
because everybody ran away from China and now.
There. But again, they have some
We
support
lost you,
behind.
Dennis. You gotta. We lost you at the point where you're saying, "Is it really?" And then that was 2 minutes ago.
I see. Sorry about that. So I'm just saying, my question is pretty simple, I guess. It's how do we actually achieve that distribution, or the to actually distribute the power to everybody, right? It's a very high level. We do have these tokens. The system there might be able to enable this kind of thing, but I still think that the whole concept of distribution might be just a miss, because you still need to delegate the technology out there, the knowledge out there. Even though John does mention that we have a pretty strong hardware at hand, we can actually do whatever we want. So education piece probably is something I'm looking at. How does we push this into more people, so people can actually use this technology?
We have companies starting up that are in the Web 3.0 relationship to crypto stuff, as I was when I started an internet service provider, right? So you didn't go and build your own internet service providing service at home. You
Sure.
would talk to your local regional internet service provider that did all of the hard stuff that cost you thousands of dollars to have that pipe, and then you used a little tiny local modem to actually get your internet. That's happening now with Web3. There are people coming through our workshops who actually sell those services, right? That sell, you need an NFT done, I will create one for you. You need an Oracle built, I will build one of those. You need a cryptocurrency token, I will not only put it up, but I'll connect it to all of the different exchanges and get it all set up. And they sell that as a service. I mean, just
good to know.
Literally over the hill here is a guy that does that.
Oh gosh, I was not aware of that. Good.
So those services I don't think are a problem. The hard question is, where does the old economy, where does the old mechanism of doing it interact with the new mechanism of doing it? And so how do I take this asset that's a real asset over here and turn it into this digital asset over there? And then how do the courts and the government respond to that? That's still in the squishy side of things, right? The whole notion that I can build an oracle and then I can build a rule about the oracle and have that take action against digital assets is really transformative. So any place you have a database where you expect duration of that data beyond the life of the company that's collecting it now, like, we run an SPV right now with Assure. If Assure dies, then there's a great big mess to be cleaned up, right? And we're going to have to dig our way out of that mess. So they have a bunch of data in their database, which is inaccessible except through their staff. If the company shuts down, we're just in trouble. And so in order to resolve that, you would like to put it onto the blockchain, have it publicly accessible that this truth is true, this group of people own this stuff, and it's known, and then doesn't matter what happens to that company. And in fact, transferring it from this company to that company becomes functionally trivial. All that they're doing is becoming my concierge to the data that's in the blockchain, not the people that own my data.
Yeah, and what the key there though is that we as humans, individuals, could choose to say, oh yeah, I'll allow John to see it, or I'll allow Dennis to see it. I will not allow Dinus to see it. I want him to touch that one. So we can choose who to try to pick and choose who to, because we would control that access to the data. It's not going to be the server in your garage. It's going to be your data that sits in the cloud, but you own it and you control it. You control who has access to it. It's still there. You don't own where it sits, but you own who touches it. And that's the
what
key.
I love the best. That's what I love the most about this.
Yeah, that's the best. That's
Well,
the
but-
thing. That's where we're trying to get to. That's where obviously
Good.
not there
Thanks,
yet.
Mike. Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
But when you have AWS cloud, and that's not the same as the Azure cloud, and that's not the same as the Google cloud, then in fact, Amazon owns it, right? And when Amazon, hits the eject button and everything blows up, which, everybody doesn't think can happen, but can happen in a heartbeat when stupidity happens. And so then that whole thing evaporates. So what blockchain allows you to do is to remove that risk and distribute it across entities, right? There is no single entity that owns blockchain in a way that they can disrupt it in the current model, right? I don't know how the proof of stake model actually defends that, but having things publicly registered or even setting up privately but distributed blockchain allows you to then distribute the fingers that can hold the data in a way that's useful. And we also have currently people working on encrypted computations where you can hand a piece of encrypted data to someone and hand an encrypted program to them, and they can run that on their server and do the math and then give you encrypted data back. They never saw what the data was, but the output of the data was what you needed if you had sent them the unencrypted data and the unencrypted program and got the unencrypted data back. Does that make sense what I just said? You do like this Laplace transform of all of the pieces, hand it off to somebody else to compute. And so what that means then with those pieces is that I can hand these things off to arbitrary computers and be secure in the knowledge that they don't know what I gave them. So then now we have a real cloud, not a privately owned cloud, which is what we currently have today, right? Because transactions are not shareable from Google to Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions or thoughts that people want to touch? Roshan, you haven't contributed yet. I don't want to leave a space for you to say something if you want. All right. Well, I guess any last words, Mike?
Go explore Web3. It's there's lots of different choices there. There's Decentraland, there's Sandlot, those are all individual metaverses. They're not the metaverse. There is no one metaverse, just FYI. There's metaverses, not one. So yeah, just go explore. And there's lots of stuff to do out there. And it's going to change so quickly. The laws, the taxes, who knows what's going to happen there? We don't know.
The one place that they should sort of pay attention to get news about Web3, what would that be?
Wow, that is a good question, John.
There's a job opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I have at least half a dozen, maybe more places that I read on a daily basis. I think if you want to look at like crypto stuff, I think crypto, what's it called? I'm looking at my email right now. Cryptopolitan is a good one. It's really crypto based, but it's really agnostic. That's a great one. Cryptopolitan. I'll just type it in the chat. What else is another one? Oh, I can tell you a great one that I think is awesome for more about banking kind of stuff. And that is Bankless. They have a podcast, which is quite good. So I'm going to type both of those in. There's Cryptopolitan and
What about DAOs?
the DAOs. I don't know if there's one yet that's great. I think there's lots that are, again, I kind of gather a lot of information from these different on both of those on the DAO world, because the DAO is it's just so new and it's a structure. It just has so many possibilities that I don't think I have one that I say this is a DAO thing. I think it's just all part of all the stuff I read. But there's just,
in order to be DAO like, you have to be a Discord person, and you have to be in the write
Discord is super popular in the DAO world. That's where everything is communicated. Like it's just it's
Discover
all over.
DAO. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
Discover DAO. There you go. Dinah's got one.
So Sarah Lee asked, is there a blockchain recommendation for tracking blockchain activities?
Maybe Dinah's knows that one. I don't know that.
Yeah, the whole space is pretty crazy, pretty wild. If you want to just keep an eye on the dynamics and developments, I would say go to CoinDesk. That's a pretty good one, CoinDesk. I can put names in there as well. They give a lot of good news and project updates. TechCrunch, the general startup website, also has coverage there as well. If you want to know not the dynamic day-to-day updates news, that's pretty overwhelming. You want to know the basics of the space, like 101. Go to like Ethereum, or go to My Ethereum Wallet. That's one of the websites you can do the basic learnings 101. You tell you what is a blockchain, what is smart contract, what is a wallet, what is a public key, private key, etc. Those are very introductive materials for anyone to kind of self-learn. Yep. For NFT, I think someone mentioned NFT. A couple things I track. One is like nonfungible.com. And
that's absolutely
that's a good one.
Non-fungible.com.
Dedicated to NFT space. And there are two websites that I use more often. Is one called the App Reader. Sorry, I'm on my phone right now, so I can't type as I speak. The App Reader that give you a lot of good project tracking as well as the data behind it. For example, you want to see how many users are using OpenSea, how many transactions per month happening on OpenSea.com or other NFT marketplaces. The App Reader give you that data and the graphs and charts to show you the trend and statistics of the NFT space. They have a coverage of many major popular NFT marketplaces, which is usually a good place to observe and learn. Similar on the broader crypto space, there's a dapp.review. Basically, that's a website tracking all the apps, decentralized apps people developed, and they can track how many users are being used that, what is the feature, what are some of the key major stats for each project. So basically from there, you can see whether that project is active or not, people are using that project or not. Because if you see their websites or some white papers, they all look pretty fancy, or you get lost easily among all different projects, and white papers and the Twitter feeds, etc. But if you look at the dapp.review, exactly, thank you, John. They give us some good coverage of the project themselves, as well as some of the metrics behind them. As we mentioned earlier, a lot of the project using the public chain, which means their data, their transactions, their user wallets, etc., they're all available on the public blockchain. So these websites, they provide a service to grab or script those data and then make them presentable to the everyday users. You don't have to go to the blockchain explorer yourself. You don't understand the language or syntax. If you go to these services, they are more presentable to the everyday users. Look at the graphs, tables and charts, so you get an idea of which project is more active than the rest. So that's another good resource to use.
Cool. Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
And, we will be doing workshops in this group, in the meetup group, for a while, but when we get to May 18th, we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll start back up in June as we go into the Seattle Angel Conference 22. We'll start with the workshops in June. If you have things about startups or things about angel investing that you want as a topic for a workshop, please drop me a note, and I'm glad to schedule it. I'm currently actively scheduling those workshops. Thank you so very much, Mike. I really appreciate you having this conversation with us. I think it was a good thing. We will post this onto our YouTube channel after we get a little bit of editing done. So let me get that for you. And if you would go into the little 3 dots on the bottom of your chat, you can save all of these wonderful links that people have been saying, and that'll be useful for you in the future. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thanks for all you
Hey, John.
thanks for all you do, buddy. Appreciate your help, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.